All right. Good morning, Catherine. How are you?
Good morning.
So today,
Welcome to November.
I know, welcome November 2nd.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't know that we would be doing this on Zoom, and
hmm
but I've shared like why designing healthy environments started. It actually started because I couldn't see anybody, or
hmm
we were just uncertain of where we were at, and
Yeah.
well, how do I stay connected, right?
hmm
So
hmm
this has been a really great way to stay connected and have people like you. So
hmm
good morning, everyone. Welcome to Designing Healthy Environments. I'm Alicia Ponce, founder and principal of AP Monarch. We are architects and sustainability consultants. And this morning we have Katherine Darnstadt.
Hi, everyone.
She is the founding principal architect of Leighton Design and founder of Boombox Chicago.
hmm
And
hmm
so we are going to talk about healthy public spaces. And
Yeah.
Catherine's going to share some images with us and really
hmm
talk about how she has been, designing public spaces for some time now. Really
hmm
exciting stuff, Catherine.
It is. It's been interesting to kind of see one part of our business grow in that particular way and then also see how it's shifted. I can't believe it's only been, 6, 7 months of this year, but how public space and designing safe spaces has really come to the forefront overall. So I will share my screen with everyone. We'll do a quick introduction about the firm and then hopefully you should be able to see a little blue dot at the middle. So again, I'm Katherine Darnstadt, the founder of Leighton Design and Boombox. And, like an architect like Alicia, we kind of probably got into the field to explore as small or as large as the possibilities of design can allow, whether that's architectural design, sustainable design, or spatial design. And ultimately, for us at Leighton Design, where we're talking about public spaces, this is one aspect of our firm, which is architecture, urbanism, and interiors. And ultimately, what we're looking at is social impact to design more equitable spaces and systems. And so when we look at public space, we started many years ago designing small scale public spaces around Chicago. How do we create space that's available for all? And it starts with how do we start to reclaim different types of spaces that can be used for a higher and better purpose. Starting with bringing the Parklet program to the city of Chicago. And you might know Parklets, which is taking
Mhm.
a parallel parking spot and turning it into a temporary or seasonal park. In Chicago, we call them people spots because we like to be a little bit different in the city than everywhere else. But this has led to a thread of thought that really then this year kind of came into the forefront of like, well, if we can't see each other, as Alicia talked about, how can we, or if our homes no longer are able to be shared, how do we share space? How do we create shared space? And this
I like the
became,
people spots. It makes it more
yeah,
personal.
you do. It's like it's where people gather, right? Then a parklet, it's like people spots, right? So it's where people gather. How do you create that space? And this year, many neighborhoods, individuals were thinking about that, and so this became like, what does a rapid response to public space start to look like? And can you create healthy new environments? And so over the summer, a big team of people, of architects and different firms worked with the city to think through what a rapid response to public space could be. And so open the 75th Street Boardwalk, which was part of designed by Site Design Group, Crook and Sexton, and a few other architects as well. It was thinking about how could you create a boardwalk. So instead of just one parking space, how could you take up 2 blocks of parking spaces and create a linear park for people to be able to gather together. And
Mhm.
then if you have to start to reinterpret what safe spaces start to look like, not only in terms of, physical safety, we have to think about, environmental safety. How do we gather? How do we sit? And what can we create from limited amounts of materials together? And we have this
When
beautiful,
was this done?
This is up still. It will be up until the end of the month, end of November. No snow, hopefully. No more snow, hopefully. But this opened up, I think, around Labor Day. So the design and planning was all summer long, and then it opened up around Labor Day. It will be up for the season, and then it will come back next season as
Yeah.
well. So this
I
is
mean,
like,
I know you've been doing these spaces for a while, but it's just like the masks is is a dead giveaway that this is
yeah,
super
this is
recent.
this year. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like starting to think about like how rapid is a rapid response in the built environment, right? Where we could, like, a rapid response from a public health standpoint, we know like we could quickly make a mask for ourselves to start to be able to move around in a new space. But like trying to create a larger community safe space, that took months of planning. So it's a different time frame that we have to think about rapid response in public spaces. We also looked at, again, this is like thinking about not only rapid response, but long-term planning, because this is a shift of what a healthy space might look like long-term. This isn't a temporary, it isn't temporary, right? We'll probably be dealing and should be thinking about not only the impacts of what we've been going through from COVID, but thinking about how that might improve environments just in general. We could take this as an opportunity to kind of improve different situations, and within public spaces can we start to think about how we could use them better, create more space, but then also for restaurants and small businesses, how do they start to respond to various public health concerns and then reopen safely. So also over the summer, we worked with the Illinois Restaurant Association to create a variety of different types of, graphics, diagrams for restaurants and small businesses to understand how they could reopen safely and reclaim some of their sidewalks or parking spaces. Part of this team, we had Weisendale, we had Ratio Architects, Sam Schwartz looking at transportation planners, and this all came out of a collaboration with, as I mentioned, the Illinois Restaurant Association and City Open Workshop here in Chicago. And that's, again, thinking about that rapid response, and then thinking about, instead of larger public use, what does it look like specifically for businesses and restaurants? And you see that like businesses are kind of like always chasing requirements of how to use public space now.
Yeah. So how was it? How was this space selected? This actual area, and how was that process?
For 75th?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two different pathways here, right? So one is like, here's this one for this slide for the Illinois Restaurant Association, is like for any restaurant can start to take advantage of that, specifically within Illinois and kind of a little bit more specifically within Cook County, because we have more restrictive requirements here in the county than we do maybe across the state. For 75th Street, and there's also another public plaza being created for next year in the Austin neighborhood that came from the city, the Department of Planning and Development, who we worked with. They were selecting areas out of the Invest Southwest initiatives. And so that's how where kind of focus areas came. So looking at those regional areas and looking at where is there a concentration of businesses, and then where was there initial support, like local support, to help kind of pull these programs together. Because it's not only like the rapid response of public space, it's also a lot of public support, and how do you find opportunities. So next year they're also looking at more areas because to be able to expand type of public spaces like this across a broader range. But this first year, like many people, is always like you're chasing your tail, trying to figure out, or maybe it feels a little bit more like ping pong. It's like one response, then another, you have to react in various ways. So this was very reactionary to situations that are coming on. And now, as we know more, we can plan more and then kind of have a more educated and prepared response, which I think is helpful. Let me see what else, but this ultimately starts to look at, so what does it look like when you're thinking about healthy public spaces, but not thinking about it in a rapid response, thinking about it for long term. And what are the components to a healthy public space? And we know it comes from where you creating a space that allows for both youth and families and anyone with mobility issues, and thinking about how do we not only recreate, but how do we rest. And we've been fortunate to think through this at a very broad scale with the Mayo Clinic and the city of Rochester in Minnesota, as part of a team to redesign all the public spaces around the Mayo Clinic, because they're thinking about how can that city not only be a world-class city and upgrade its infrastructure, but really could this be a city of wellness? So if a doctor wanted to do something as simple and say, hey, for you to get healthy and part of your recovery is to take walks around the block, what does that block actually look like?
Yeah.
Does it have trees? Does it have seats? Is it wide enough? What does that look like when you have to then give that same kind of prescription to people from 10 different countries? And what does that mean when you have a cultural overlay of a kind of like a global audience? And so this has been a project that's been in the works and planning for years now. And this first phase is under construction. This is their main downtown public plaza called Heart of the City. It's a new scrim pool with sculpture, and then these platforms that you're seeing here with people all actually spread apart on a rolling track, so they could come together and be a stage for performance, get pulled apart for individual or group seating. And we were thinking about distances and making spaces and pathways 5 and 6 feet apart, just thinking about last year and 2 years ago, thinking about mobility issues, cultural issues, different ways that people gather both individually or in groups. And this was before the magic number of 6 feet because of viral transmissions has come into play. So this is something that we were already thinking about. How do people gather, and how do people that are in various stages of recovery gather, and how can they do that in a safe way? What's interesting as a
feel like, when you're exploring these spaces and you've partnered up with the Mayo Clinic to do the research, do you guys get into like acoustics and air quality of these spaces as well?
Yeah, so for this one, and what's kind of wild about this space, a Chicago connection, this plaza is only slightly bigger than a Chicago lot, typical Chicago lot, which is 25 by 125. So it's what we're really studying is how much programming can go into a similar size space, because Chicago is a larger city. We tend to oversize what we think we need for a public gathering space, whereas here we're working on such a constricted site. To see the level of programming and then compare it to Chicago, I think is a helpful study. But to your air quality and mapping, that was all part of the initial site assessments that we went through with the larger team to look at, what was the air quality? What were the acoustics like? Because we're surrounded by a bunch of buildings. So there are issues, we're surrounded by one historic, but mostly newer construction within the last 20 years. So what does that vertical hardscape do to sound? And so part of that thinking about sound mitigation is then how do we calm traffic overall? Because we can't completely vacate the streetscape because you still have ambulances that might need to drop someone off, or different vans. But we thought about how do we calm traffic so that noise doesn't reverberate all throughout, because essentially you're in a corridor too, if you're surrounded by all these buildings. And then we started to look at heat island of impacts, because once you mapped everything in the existing conditions, there were like in the same area, there were probably about literally 6 benches and like 12 trees. And now we're putting, we're putting over 30 benches and, over 100 trees. So that's a big difference. Right? Yeah. When we started to see what was the existing infrastructure, and then how can we switch that all together. So this whole kind of this idea of forest rooms coming together, these benches and trees just don't exist right now. And it once you start to lay that into conversation of, well, now we have shade, we have we have seating, we can take that walk and we can gather in an environment that's nice to be in, right? And I think the other thing that kind of played into it is there was always a public perception, or at least a client perception, that there was tons of seating because they were seeing the seating from the restaurants that are around there. And they're like, oh yeah, there's lots of seating for people to go on to sit down because I see the restaurant tables and chairs, but that's not public seating, right? So we had to kind of help them understand what the existing conditions really were and kind of help switch perceptions as well. So this is currently under construction now, this section, and it will open next spring. And then we're also working on a phase 2 that is a streetscape that's connecting this downtown plaza to the river and to a public park over a 5-block, what we call 5-block garden walk that we're creating right now. So these principles are coming into that as well. And for us, at Latent Design, that's one aspect of our work where we think about, public spaces on the exteriors, but that absolutely translates to how we look at, interior spaces, from affordable housing to commercial retail to the high rises we're working on. That definitely is important to the metrics and the information and the mission we kind of carry forward in our work.
Thank you. Or what was?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, were you going to continue showing something else?
No, that was
okay. I thought you were
everything
going
I
to.
had.
No, I was a little.
Sorry.
Before this call, Catherine, we were talking about our kids, right?
Yeah.
Obviously this is going on 8 months, but I don't know. My son decided to play with his cars right now, and he's like crashing them against the door.
That's funny.
And I'm like, right now?
That sounds about right.
That's where I was like, can everybody hear that? But yeah, so this is really exciting. I was thinking of actually realizing that in a lot of like Latin American countries, these public spaces are very successful and very beautiful, like the plazas. The plaza, and then there's a kiosk in the middle. It's very it's a well-known design, and I realize I'm like, there's not very many spaces like that here, or at least that I know of.
Yeah.
Right, that engage people, and people know that, okay, on the weekends or when you want to relax, you go to the plaza, right? And people watch, right? Or eat, or you just hang around. But so this is something that's exciting to see, and what you guys are working on.
And I think you're absolutely right on that. I think there's been, when we were working through the Boombox program and started that, which is that little micro retail kiosk that you're talking about that you would see on a Zocalo or something like that. When we looked at the kind of the zoning of that, is over time there was a kind of a trend, and maybe it was a Chicago trend, or really maybe a North American like planning trend of like thinking too much about safety and gathering as fearful, as like something that needs to be overly policed. So you could even see in the zoning map where newspaper stands, kiosks were zoned out of existence, and then it's been a process of trying to bring them back as actual public benefit overall. So I think that kind of shift to creating space and letting people gather is important, I think, but it brings up a lot of other social issues that come with that. Is like, you do have to think about, quality of space and quality of life, right? But I think also there's still a heavy-handed approach to how we govern public spaces, instead of letting it be a little bit more open and casual, and knowing that people will gather and enjoy themselves in many different ways. There's kind of a set urban planning approach where for the past couple decades, where it's like we have to prescribe all the programming that happens in the space. It's only can be this type of programming and nothing else.
If you brought it up, because what the challenges are, because then it becomes, well, you don't want it to be like this hostile architecture, right? You want it to be welcoming, and so it's an interesting challenge, figure out the opportunities within those challenges. It's ongoing, I imagine.
Right.
In this type
Yeah, and I think we're working on a project that'll start next year in Little Village, for the only public plaza in Little Village, which is Manuel Perez Plaza on 26th and Costner, pretty much. And so we're looking at a temporary activation to bring a market there and to kind of find temporary improvements so that it could kind of create a demand for an overhaul of the plaza. So that plaza, not only is it memorial, but it should be active gathering space. But when you look at how it was designed, you can see this all over different cities, is like you have the fixed concrete seats and you have like a chess table. So you have like 4 seats and then like a chess table in the middle. And that was a total design style. It was like, this is what happens right here, you know, as how planners and designers thought public space should operate. And that doesn't allow for the flexibility of how it could.
Kiosk, that concrete kiosk or that raised concrete stage there. Just very interesting. I'm excited that you're going to be working on this space. I can't wait to see it because it needs a lot of it needs a lot of love.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I think there's also, it's an interesting space to look at because it has all what you would think of like the baseline qualities of what would make a great public space. It does have shade, it does have light, it's on a commercial corridor, it has seating, you know, sure, everything could use a little love on it. But, you know, thinking about how you could have multiple people and programming exist and kind of like bring that attention back is what we're really working on over the next year with the chamber and different community groups. As I said, it will be temporary, so maybe a 1 or 2 year installation, hoping that, you know, the city starts to see it as important and starts to fund it, right? Because where we see public space improvements is definitely not geographically spread out in an even fashion. So we see more public space improvements in more affluent neighborhoods, and even in the trend of just even working through the boombox program, we've seen more public plazas get rehabbed on the north side of the city than the south or the west sides combined, right? So it's like, how do we start to use these temporary rapid responses of public health and public safety interventions to start to say, this is the long-term solution that's needed, and this is the long-term attention that's needed across all of our communities and not just select communities.
Yeah. So what are the, can you speak more about the opportunities and challenges when you work on these spaces, or, you know, our opportunities to lead as designers?
I think there's a lot of opportunities within there. So, you know, not just for 75th Street Boardwalk, that was led by Site Design and Crook and Sexton coming together. And I think they found a lot of opportunities to lead with how they not only designed it, but thought through the process of creation of the space. So they used it as a learning tool. They hired local contractors. They taught youth basic construction skills. So they made it not only an amazing design, but they also kind of made it a celebration and made it an educational tool. And I think, you know, that at this kind of smaller scale, rapid response level can be something that can be incorporated into projects of all sizes. And I know you do that a lot in your own work too, is like, how do we use this building to talk about sustainability to everyone that comes through it versus just like the core design team only knowing the information.
Right. You want to make it engaging and educational wherever you can.
Right.
And, you know, when we speak of designing healthy environments, we're not just talking about, you know, a structure, right? We're talking about making an environment healthy and equitable and, you know, socially just, because we want that wellness. We want that wellness for our communities. We want to, like, for that, you know, project on 75th, it's like, you want the community to feel proud, right? To feel happy and say, hey, this is my neighborhood. And, you know, it activates the community.
Exactly.
So what are you, I always ask people, what what do you recommend? What are you reading right now, Catherine?
Oh, we mean what have I read the first 15 pages of and then stopped? Many things that I was that I'm reading. Um,
Architecturally related or just like something fun or
I think there were a lot of, what the fun thing that I actually did, the most recent book that I bought myself, and it's like totally my beach read, but I really enjoy it because I want to hear a lot of these stories. I want to kind of like be reminded about people a lot. I bought Humans of New York book. It's a photo book. I don't know if
okay.
you know this
Yeah.
photographer. Yeah. So I bought his book and I just like looking at all of these stories and people,
Good
and
book.
it's a picture book, so I needed that because, as I said, I'm only reading 10 pages and that's it. But I think that's like my personal thing that I purchased because I'm very interested. Like I need that human connection again, right, from the last couple months. So that's the way I'm getting it. And then the other thing that I've been I've been reading not necessarily more kind of more social justice works and refamiliarizing myself with that, and like how does that start to impact how we design urban spaces. I've been taking a couple courses through and kind of listening through um, Dark Matter University. So I think that's a great organization of academics who are creating content. And just going to as many virtual sessions. I think it's been more virtual sessions than reading, right? Because I could go to so many more conferences now
Yeah,
than I could
true.
before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder how that's going to change, like once this is all, over, because conferences or information is a lot more accessible. Um,
Hmm.
just this, beginning with these talks too,
Hmm.
able to go national and international and really get it, be more engaging.
Hmm.
So the possibilities are endless. I'm
Hmm.
just trying to remember how long ago was it that we met? And it's been like maybe,
8 or 10 years, maybe.
I think it's
You
longer.
think so? I don't know. It couldn't have been before I had the firm because I started the firm 10 years ago. Did we know each? I don't think I knew you at my previous job.
I think, okay, this is how it works. Um, I think it was at like a young architects gathering or something like AIA Young Architects.
Or it was Emerging Green Builders when it was at USGBC, maybe.
One of those.
I think it
But
was one of those. When we
okay,
were all younger, is what you're saying, we met.
agree on that. But what I mean to say is that it's like, it's really good to see, what you're doing. 10 years ago, who would have thought like, we both own our firm or 15 years ago or
Yeah.
whatever, somewhere between 15 and 10 years. And it's just been really good to see everything that you've been up to and just really making a positive impact in a very, very unique way, I think, than many other firms
Hmm.
are doing. So, yeah, congratulations on that. And just talking, as women, as moms, and architecture. Lately, I've been reading all of this info on like how women are being impacted by the
Hmm.
pandemic, women
Yeah.
workforce and how many women are leaving, to be with their kids. And
Mhm.
so this is a challenging time.
It is. It is. I mean, it's a challenging time for everyone, but I do think, you know, it's like normally as you run your own firm, you're used to like one or two things every year trying to take you out. You're like, woo, I overcame that. But this year just feels like everything is trying to take you out at once. And I think many people feel that, not just even firm owners, but I think it's like a unique, you're like, oh, this project tried to kill me this year, but it didn't get to me. Now it's like every project tries to kill you this year. Um, and so and I think as a woman in the profession, what I'm really excited about over the past 10 years is like, first, I can't even believe we're having a 10-year anniversary, which is totally wild. And, thinking about the next 10 years is also something that is really important to myself and like how this firm of people grow and the types of projects that we have grow. Um, but it's also I think what's really wonderful is how many people that you're starting to see come up and also have their own firm. You know, somebody you might have worked with or was a peer is now thinking about going on their own. And I think that becomes very exciting to think about the teams that we could create and the people that we could collaborate with over the next 10 years. Gets me really hyped up. So 2020 could try and take me out all at once. I'm looking forward, you know, to 2030 at this point and planning for that. And just knowing that, you know, maybe I could even be working on projects with my former employees who start their own firms, right? So I think that's very exciting to see that, and just to know that like we like made it this far, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's huge, a huge accomplishment for both of our firms and for both of us to just kind of be able to do it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not easy. It's just I never, I don't know about you, Catherine, but I never thought that I would start a business. It was never something that, you know, I was like in college or even late when I started working, I'm going to start my own business. It was
Yeah.
never an idea. But it was because, you know, this type of architecture of you know, high performance design, resilient design,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like, I want to make a difference. I really want
Mm-hmm.
types of projects and
Mm-hmm.
work with clients to make and design buildings that are transformative, right? Right now
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to reduce carbon emissions. How do we be very creative about that and, you know, still continue in this field that
Mm-hmm.
is set in its ways, and
Yeah.
down so many angles, so many players,
Mm-hmm.
that we're all changing the way we do things. We're being
Mm-hmm.
innovative. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what really, one of the reasons why it pushed me to start my own business, you know, to make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and no, it's been really, really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's awesome. More awesome than headache, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going on 10 years, it has to be good. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
so I want to thank you so much, Catherine, for your time this morning. It's really great to, you know, hear again what you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everyone listening, you know, check out Lane Design and Boombox Chicago. Some very
Mm-hmm.
exciting things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so keep in touch. Next week we're gonna go into healthcare again. We've had a couple
Mm-hmm.
talks, but we're gonna focus on healthy spaces for children within healthcare, because we've all, you know, if you're a parent, chances are you've had your child with you on your appointments, and what does that look like in an exam
Mm-hmm.
room or a waiting room, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that. Very good, along with my longtime mentor and friend, Doug King. So looking forward to it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you again, Catherine, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.